Hey, my name is Neha, and I invite you to our lesson on the complexities of applying AASB 138 and the role of professional judgment. Introduction. Intangible assets have become increasingly significant in modern economics given that industries are greatly tending towards a knowledge based operations, however, recognizes intangible assets is challenging for organizations due to the abstract nature of these assets and the substantial professional judgment required. In addition, some forms of intangible assets in the broader categories of blockchain and cybersecurity categories fall out of the scope accounting standard. Manscott and Zhang 2024. Therefore, even though AASB 138 seeks to govern the recognition and measurement of intangible assets, applying them in practice is fraught with difficulties which informs the essence of this essay. Next slide. Definitions under AASB 138. AASB 138 defines intangible assets as non monetary assets without physical substance that are identifiable, controlled by the entity, and expected to generate future economic benefits. According to Section 8 of AASB 138, intangible assets must be either separable from the entity or arise from contractual or legal rights. With such a definition, various types of assets, among them intellectual property, goodwill, and research and development costs, are classified as intangible assets. For an intangible assets to be recognized, it must meet three key criteria: identifiability, control, and the expectation of future economic benefits. For identifiability, the assets must take a form that can be separated from the entity or be one that originates from legal or contractual rights. On the matter of control, the organization must demonstrate that it has control over the future economic benefits of the assets. AASB 138. The asset must generate future economic benefits for the company either through revenue, cost savings, or competitive advantage. Next slide. Complexity introduced by AASB 138. One major issue in assessing whether certain intangible items meet the criteria under AASB 138 is determining the likelihood of future economic benefits as required by Section 21C of AASB 138. Intangible assets that arise from research and development or technological innovation often involve uncertain future returns that make it difficult to reliably estimate their probability, leading to significant variations in recognition across industries. Next slide. Complexity introduced by AASB 138. The Australian Department of Finance 2022 presents the capitalization of internally developed software ideas cost as a source of complexity under AASB 138 due to the division between the research and the development phases and the specific requirements for each. The research phase involves activities aimed at obtaining knowledge and evaluating alternatives, but all related costs must be expensed as incurred with no option for capitalization. Section 54. This creates a challenge as entities must accurately identify when the project transition from research to development. The development phase allows for capitalization of cost only if strict criteria are met under Section 21 and 57 of AASB 138, improving the ability to complete and use the software asset. However, distinction between these phases is often difficult, and when the phase of expenditure can be clearly identified, the cost must be expenses as research related under Section 53, thereby leading to financial reporting inconsistencies. Furthermore, entities must demonstrate the asset's utility, not necessarily its salability, complicating the decision making. Process of capitalization AASB 138 1057D. These requirements introduce a high level of subjectivity and demand significant professional judgment, increasing the complexity of recognizing and measuring IDS scores accurately. Next slide. Complexity introduced by AASB 138. Cho Sidhu and Yang 2023 discuss the significant impact that AASB 138 has had on the financial reporting of Australian firms, with a greater emphasis on the consequences of dissolving the recognition of internally generated intangibles. The study relates how the pre 205 Australian GAAP allow for greater flexibility in recognizing internally generated intangibles while providing more detailed information about these assets in financial statements. However, with the adoption of AASB 138, which mirrors IFRS standards, firms are no longer able to capitalize many internally generated intangible assets unless they meet strict recognition criteria. Such a shift leads to a reduction in the information content of balance sheets, as certain intangibles that are crucial to a firm's long-term success are no longer reflected in the accounts. 2023, the derecognition also contribute to higher information asymmetry, as the intangible assets are expensed rather than being capitalized, forcing investors and analysts to rely on narrative disclosures or market data as alternative sources of information to assess a firm's intangible value. HOET 2023. Next slide. Complexity introduced by AASB 138. In the technology sector, companies invest heavily in software development, which AASB 138 often involves substantial professional judgment when accessing the technical feasibility of completing the software and its future commercial success. Misjudging these factors can lead to under or over capitalization that result in inaccurate financial reporting. In the same vein, the recognition of brands and trademarkers in the retail and consumer goods sectors under Section AASB 138. The useful life of an intangible asset must be reassessed if there is evidence of obsolescence or changes in the market. For brands with a long standing presence in the market, how to determine their useful life and accessing potential impairments can be difficult in competitive industries where market perception fluctuates, sometimes require heavy R&D investment. However, based on the assets of Section 57 of AASB 138, development cost can only be capitalized if the organization demonstrates that the asset will generate future economic benefits, among other criteria. For instance, large technology firms like Microsoft and Apple frequently capitalize software development costs related to proprietary software. However, determining when these costs meet the recognized criteria under next slide. Complexity introduced by AASB 138 means et al. 2024 so that firms with more extensive disclosures for unrecognized intangible tend to accept a stronger association between goodwill and market value, which reinforce the complementary role of additional disclosure alongside recognized intangibles. However, based on Section 48 of AASB 138, internally generated goodwill cannot be recognized. However, goodwill arising from can be recognized under certain conditions. After recognized, companies must perform annual impairment testing as required by Section 10A of AASB 138 to ensure that the carrying amount of goodwill does not exceed its recoverable amount. Misjudging future economic benefits or applying incorrect assumptions in impairment testing could lead to significant financial misstatements. Next slide. The need for professional judgment. Coe and Zhang 2919 note that standard may limit that extent to which a practicing can be uncertainty and risk in auditing and accounting. Judgment is exercised in evaluating evidence, estimating probabilities, and deciding between different options. Among others, a sound judgment process incorporates logical, unbiased, and informed conscious thinking, really on their own judgment on a matter, but the standards still fail to sufficiently remove the need for reliance on professional judgment. 2011 defines professional judgment as the process of reaching a conclusion when several alternative solutions exist in environment market. Please. Next slide. Complexity introduced by AASB 138 in the current context. The recognized of intangible assets under AASB 138 significantly hinges on the application of professional judgment, that is, by the subjective nature of these assets. Accountants and auditors are frequently called upon to make substantial estimation and assumption to determine if such assets meet the established recognized criteria. To make informed decisions, there is usually a need for an assessment of the future economic benefit of an intangible asset by potential revenue streams or cost saving. There still remains a risk that there will be flaw in the estimation process carriers. Considering a practical scenario, Section 9 of AASB 138 allows for the use of professional judgment in the impairment testing of intangible assets that have identified useful lives. However, calculating value in use involve complex projections of future cash flows and discount rates, in which overly optimistic projections or incorrect assumptions can lead to an overstatement of the asset's value and skew financial reports. Next slide. Slide 11 conclusion. From the foregoing discussion, recognize intangible assets under AASB 138 presents considerable challenges for organizations due to the subjective nature of these assets and the reliance on professional judgment. The essay has discussed the existence of complexities and uncertainties in the identification, control, and measurement of future economic benefits. Additionally, it has shown that stringent criteria under AASB 138 on internally generated intangible and the capitalization of development cost often lead to inconsistent reporting practices. As a remedy, firms are required to apply significant professional judgment but be cautious of misappropriating this liberty in ways that lead to misstatement of financial results. There, however, remains a processing need for a balanced approach that allow for better recognize and disclosure practices that also maintains the integrity of financial reporting standard.